So welcome to the Inspired to be Authentic podcast. My name is Matt Lansettle. I am your host. Inspired to be Authentic is a podcast where we converse with people who are living their most authentic lives. We get real with our guests and talk openly about how they live with courage to be themselves. We explore barriers they have overcome to be more authentic and aligned to themselves and their purpose. Today is episode 14, and we have Bryce Hardin with us. Welcome, Bryce.
Hi, thank you, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's really great to have you on. Today, we're going to be talking about how to have a difficult conversation around racism. This is a very, very prevalent topic right now. This is something that creates a lot of anxiety for people. And today, Bryce and I are going to break it down, and we're going to have a conversation, a conscious conversation about race and how we can show people how you can have conversations and bring connection and togetherness in this type of conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that. I want to introduce Bryce officially. So for a living, Bryce is a baker for a well-known grocery chain in the Southeast US. He is also a screen and voice actor. He has also done self-work for the past 9 years and feels that his calling is not only for self-awareness, but also self-acceptance too. And most importantly, you're a human being. That's really so important. And what I want to highlight today is the human experience that we all share, but I also want to break down like some of these other areas that, make us different, right? So that's what this conversation is going to be all about today. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I want to give a bit of a backstory because I think it's important for the audience to understand. I reached out to Bryce. He joined a group that I started on Facebook, and reached out to him after I had a bit of a difficult conversation with somebody around race, and I just wanted to pick his brain. I think I asked him, with all this Black Lives Matter stuff going on, how do you feel about it? And maybe I'll just even pose that question to you again. What are you feeling currently with this stuff going on around BLM and this movement?
Well, I would not particularly assign everything to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay.
The Black Lives Matter movement is addressing a lifelong situation that has been invented since, I believe, the Spanish Inquisition, of the topic of race to differentiate. Because when human beings see something, we don't know what it is. We got to name it.
Yeah, labeling.
So that we can familiarize ourselves with it.
Yeah.
And it isn't so much. It really, it's been it's been systemized to the point where certain groups of people have an advantage and certain groups of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what the Black Lives Matter is the BLM movement is addressing the different treatment of police, the feeling of being safe and secure, the vast obvious difference between Caucasian people or people of European descent,
yeah,
and then African people or African Americans,
okay,
people of African descent, particularly here in the United States.
Yeah.
Where it has been like after slavery, okay, we can't trade slaves anymore. What do we do with all these people that we have imported after, we can't have them as slaves?
Yeah.
So basically another form of slavery was instituted, even though it wasn't called slavery, it was called the criminalization. It was called criminalization.
Okay.
Because I saw a documentary maybe a couple weeks ago on the 13th Amendment to spell it out and saying no man is supposed to be under servitude unless they're a criminal.
Mm.
Like, you got to really read that.
Yeah.
So what's another way to, and the lifelong fear is that white Americans are going to lose everything to equality. White Americans are going to lose that. It's been this since it's been this at least the past couple centuries, at
Yeah.
least the past few centuries has been, you know, if you don't claim yourself to be superior than black people or brown people or yellow people, they're going to take what you have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just been this long life fear, and especially one way to keep a nation of people down is through your safety system. It's been a part of institutionalized racism for centuries. It's even in our Constitution that says that people of African descent are 3/5 of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're treated like animals, if you've seen in several video clips,
Yeah.
several, like people are recording it on their phones now.
Yeah.
Like it isn't your word against mine. It's you got this now. You
Yeah.
got these devices that you can record now. And the thing that the Black Lives Matter movement is addressing, especially, is the disparity and the impairment and the false balance in the judicial system,
Yeah.
in the judicial and the policing system of how blacks are treated and how whites are treated, and like even of several cases of where it's either minor crimes or what they call misdemeanors.
Yeah.
Like I'll even say here in Georgia is where I live.
Yeah. In Atlanta, correct?
Yeah, in Atlanta. So about 4 hours southeast of me is this place called Brunswick, Georgia. And these were three, they show you in the video clip, 3 white guys were going after a black guy running through an affluent neighborhood. He was just taking a jog. This is all he was doing. Like, this hit me home when it happened in my state.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, his name was Ahmaud Arbery. I believe he was 25 years old. And he just wanted to run through the neighborhood. And he was looking at a house that was on sale. You know, a lot of us look at houses on sale because it's a dream.
Yeah.
It's a part of the American dream
Yeah.
of, you know, what we want. It's like our own home or our own job or our own business or our own, you know, what they call living the life, living the dream. And then those 3 white men, which one of them was taping the incident, was following him. And then in order for him to not escape or run off or anything, the vehicles were blocking him in. And then next thing, the young guy, the son, came out with a shotgun. And so Ahmaud Arbery reacted to protect himself. So wrestled with the guy with the shotgun. And finally, he was shot about 4 times. And he was dead. And then they went back and then they told the police because the father was in cahoots with the police chief or whatever, or with the DA. He was in cahoots with the citizens because he's an ex-police officer.
Yeah.
You know, it's so they covered it up for the last 2.5 months. Because this happened February 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came out at the beginning of May.
Wow.
So that long, a murder
Mm-hmm.
was not taken care of because they were trying to decide which DA was going to be taking care of it. And the first DA, because they were in cahoots with the suspects, that we wouldn't take it on.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how when the videotape came out, that's when the Georgia Bureau of Investigation came out, because They didn't want the FBI to get involved, because if you have the FBI get involved in your state, and then a bunch of Southern white men are going to be up in the air, the feathers are going to ruffle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when this came out, I was flabbergasted. And we were still already dealing with COVID-19. We're still dealing with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am being scheduled just about every day at 4 a.m. in the morning. Now they put curfew laws in the, once again, why were Black people being arrested on curfew, vagrancy, like in the old days after slavery, and put them in chain gangs to build railroads? And once again, am I going to get pulled over? Is this stuff going to happen to me? It was just like, am I safe? Because you don't feel safe in the neighborhoods where you live among your neighbors. And then you call the police to expect them to have you feel safe, and they actually have you feel more unsafe.
Yeah.
But anyway, with this Ahmaud Arbery, and here it is, even though it was not the policeman, it was not an on-duty policeman that killed Ahmaud Arbery. Still, the way the police handled it around Brunswick, Georgia, they covered it up. So it was just like, there's a safety issue that's there, and there's the judicial system that's there. And there's just like, this is what Black Lives Matter movement is actually trying to say. This is not acceptable. Why is it that anything that involves a mistreatment of a Black male, it's put under the rug?
Under the rug, yeah.
You could go back to let's see, Trayvon Martin. That's where the Black Lives Matter was born out of. Trayvon Martin. He was a teenager in a hoodie walking through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a guy by the name of George Zimmerman following him, and called 911 and decided to play heroics. After all the 911 called 911, the dispatcher said, we don't think that's a very good idea. You should let the police handle this matter. You should do this, and had a gun on him and everything. And you could hear them. George Zimmerman gets out of his car. Him and Trayvon Martin are struggling, and then a gunshot goes off. And you know what Trayvon Martin had in his pocket? Skittles.
Wow.
We have Skittles, cell phones, wallets, keys, anything trivial. And then all this extreme, I even looked up which amendment was pertaining to cruel and unusual punishment. Like, our country is so out of integrity with our Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. The First Amendment right, anytime when Black folks in this country historically have done assembly, petitions, here comes tear gas, here comes rubber bullets, here comes rubber batons, here comes push down, everything. The Ku Klux Klan can hold something in a state park, which a lot of other white folks object to, but because they are American citizens and because they hold it in a public place, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to preach hate, not just hate, but murder.
Yeah.
Murdering someone to feel superior.
It's crazy to think that still happens. You
yes.
know, like when I think about that, I think about that happening in the 50s. I don't think about it happening anymore, but it clearly is.
No, but it takes on different forms. It isn't just in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's the 50s that brought it to the attention of stuff that's already been happening.
Yeah.
Especially during Reconstruction.
Yeah. That's actually an area that I want to dig in with you, because I think when we look at things that happened in the 50s, it was very much overt racism. Okay. It was acceptable to be overtly racist. How has that changed now? And how does covert racism express itself in your experience?
Money.
Money. Okay. How so?
Oh, money. money.
Okay.
It is. It's
Tell me
money.
more. Tell me more. I want to know more about it.
Okay. Anytime when a media is brave enough to show how it treats its citizens that are different than them, and the whole world is watching. You remember Birmingham in 1963,
Yeah.
where these police got these garden hoses, not garden hoses, but fire hoses,
Yeah.
where water pressure, like it could just blow your heart out. And the whole world is watching.
Yeah.
The whole world is watching. And you're like, who wants to do business in a country like that? When we go to Middle Eastern countries that are like third world countries, where they have legal torture of people,
Yeah.
America is the first one to speak up about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Until it's found in your own backyard.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because we want to look good.
Yeah, it's all about image.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's about image and money.
So back to the original question about covert racism is expressing itself in maybe your life or your experiences with it. How does that, because I know covert racism is more the contributor to systemic racism than overt racism is. So how does covert racism, like subtle racism, present itself in today, today's day and age?
It presents. I'm gonna tell you how it presents itself, and I see this on Looking for Jobs all the time. Back in the 80s and the 90s, what was happening was, since people were getting in trouble with credit, they would use that against you into being eligible for a job. And guess who was affected by credit issues more than anybody else?
Yeah.
So guess what? We didn't have that much access to go and file a bankruptcy like everybody else. So therefore, if our credit was bad, we couldn't get a job. Here's another way of how covert racism happens. How far do you live from another job? Because all the good jobs or the decent jobs are in the affluent neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And very often in the affluent neighborhoods in America, when you're living in the hood like me, it's like about over 20 miles away.
So they're using proximity as a way to discriminate?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Proximity issues. Do you have a car? And again, how much easier is it for anybody else to get a car versus an African American getting a car?
Yeah. What is it like for you?
It shows up very subtly. Do you remember back in like the 1990s when they were having subprime loans?
No. I was just 5 years old.
You were how old?
I was just 5 years old.
Oh, child, you a baby. I was in my 20s.
Yeah, okay.
So let me tell you, subprime loans are those type of loans that are outside of regulations of what it is to approve someone for a loan, to prove someone qualified. Okay. Because the income gap among whites and blacks are so far, the wealth gap, the wealth disparity in this country, because we basically were enslaved to build the country without profiting anything from it. We couldn't we didn't have anything to pass on to our future generations. We didn't have anything. And we still got a long way to catch up if you want to do research on it, But but back in the 90s, they started doing subprime loans. This was with Bill Clinton's presidency, where a whole bunch of African Americans, including myself, we supported him because we wanted change. But a lot of stuff that they were doing in their presidency had actually worked against the African American community, including the subprime loans. Subprime loans, in other words, subprime loans, you're subject to higher, you're subject to variable rates, you're subject to higher interest rates because you don't have the income to meet what you want to get approved for.
Okay.
Because, like I said again, everything is based on your income. Where a white person's income is here and a black person's income is still down here, and there's still a gap. You can go to Bureau of Labor Statistics for the United States,
Mm.
and it's not. So instead of solving this problem, doing this, what the government did was, we'll still have traditional loans for white people, and for black and brown people, we'll have these subprime loans. So
Mm.
basically, they can live in the same neighborhood, be here for free.
Yeah.
Whereas in fact, in maybe like in 12 to 24 months, because you were under such a variable rate, or the type of mortgage that you had, some mortgages, they had like a balloon insurance, a balloon interest package, where your interest could be much higher. Your interest is much higher than your principal payment.
Mm.
And what happened, what I've seen a whole lot happen, is a lot of African Americans would be in foreclosure. Like, I'll tell you my experience. I was just beginning I was still pretty new to the South. I'm from Chicago. I was still pretty new to the South back in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
There's the stock clerk, black female stock clerk. She was only getting $8 an hour. And somehow she was able to move into a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, 1,200 square feet. I don't know how many what, but I know she was like, she had to come up with $1,200 a month
Yeah.
on $8 an hour.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
You don't qualify for a loan like that on $8 an hour. That's on for a 40-hour week. That's only $320 a week. So if you do $320 a week,
It's like all your
that's
money.
that's $1,280 a month before taxes.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a negative right there. So then after taxes, you're lucky if you get 1,000. So then you're $200 in the hole.
Yeah.
So like, how did you qualify? Because we have a big culture of materialism. In order for me to feel valid, in order for me to feel valuable, I got to have these material assets to show off to people.
Yeah. Do you think that's
It's,
more prevalent in the African American community, or is it prevalent in the human species? Like, what would your opinion
it's
be?
prevalent in American culture, period.
Yeah, and Canadian
But
culture too.
especially in the African American community, where it's like the only way that we can feel valid is to fit in with everybody else.
Yeah.
The only way to feel valid, because this is like, to a certain extent, we're like one of the only communities that don't see value within ourselves and don't see value within each other, because we've been taught standards of beauty. We've been taught standards of beauty.
Yeah.
We've been taught standards of ethnicity. We've been taught basically of what it is to be a human being. And what it is to be a human being, you picture a white male. Same thing with women.
Yeah.
Like women, some women have been taught and conditioned to feel, in order for you to feel value as a woman, you gotta have a man in your arms. And in order for you to have a man in your arms, you gotta have long hair.
Yeah.
If you don't have long hair, you better get some weave tracks in.
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta have makeup. You gotta have banging eyelashes. You gotta have a flawless wardrobe. You better have a svelte figure.
Hmm.
If you're too big.
Are we talking about shame?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. How does that impact? Well, let's. Would you be even willing to share personally for yourself? How has shame had an influence on your life?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear that.
The biggest shame for me hasn't been around being African American or being Black. As a matter of fact, I was blessed enough to grow up in a racially integrated neighborhood where I got to see all sorts of people and all sorts of cultures.
Mm.
I had mixed kids in my neighborhood. There are mixed kids there are mixed people in my family. That's not unusual
Yeah.
for me at all. But anyway, the prevalence of shame was not so much in my racial background. The prevalence of shame was so much in it as what it is to be a man.
Ooh, that's a good one.
What it is to be a man. I was very effeminate and artistic. I was also labeled learning disabled and socially handicapped because I didn't do the things that other boys would do. And I felt at that time boys were rough, vindictive, mean, like venomous, too highly competitive. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So I would play with the girls. The girls were more creative and innovative and fun. And
That was like me growing up.
yeah,
I felt safety. I felt safety in the feminine energy until I got to a certain age where I started to reject feminine aspects. And it was within the gay community that I actually picked up on
yeah.
the,
Oh, yeah.
the,
Okay. No fats, no femmes,
yeah,
no
exactly.
blacks, no this, no that.
Right? I know.
Pardon my French. This is what I say.
Fuck that shit. Yeah. Yeah. I agree, and I think it's so important to be having these conversations for this reason. And the work that I do, the primary work that I do, is helping people through shame. Okay, and I want to know in as many ways as shame infiltrates itself in people through all different ways, through being um, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's race, whether it's age, whatever, right? We all experience shame to a certain degree in our lives. And it's good for us all to be informed on the different and unique ways shame shows up for us, right? Because I don't understand what it would be like to have shame around being a person of color, right? But I do understand shame of being a person with privilege, right? That's a different expression of shame. And I think it's important to have these conversations because it's like it once we understand where each other is coming from, it makes it a whole hell of a lot easier to practice empathy and compassion, right? That's what we need to be rooted in if we want to make change on this planet, where we're no longer seeking to have power over other people to feel good about ourselves, right? That's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Yeah,
Power.
exactly. I mean, you could read the Bible where the Hebrews were slaves of the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know I don't know what your beliefs are. I've been rooted in Christian leanings, and
Yeah.
when I came down south, I had to study the Bible because that is the language of the South.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
I
not
grew up
enough.
Catholic, so I would understand some of
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
it's
Yeah.
not enough to say God loves me.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
If you are going to say God loves you, you better have evidence to back it up,
Yeah, exactly.
and you
Yeah.
better do a study from what it is, a cultural context, who wrote it, who put it in there, why was it put in, and there are some gospels that were excluded. So, but anyway, that's a totally another.
Yeah.
But anyway, to discuss on shame in my life, it wasn't so much of me being African American, it was so much of me being labeled, socially disabled, learning disabled. So I was called half retarded. So I made that mean I was dumb and less than, my brother and sister. And I told myself I didn't fit in with my family.
Yeah.
Then here it was effeminate. I love playing with my sister's dolls more than I love playing with my brother's talking trunks.
Mm-hmm. Good for
You
you.
know, it just sorry, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
And then being made shameful by other boys.
Yeah.
Then you find out the species you've been resisting. Then when I found out the species I've been resisting is a species that I'm sexually attracted to.
Yeah.
That's the third whammy. Like boom.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that one for sure.
And by 16, I was totally suicidal. And guess which people gave me a hard time about being gay the most?
African Americans.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very,
Absolutely.
homophobia is
Like I
very
say,
prevalent in that culture.
everybody has a Hebrew state of mind. The Hebrews became the Israelites.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when folks from Europe had moved over here to the Americas. The people in Europe were trying to escape religious oppression.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it happening to me. But then come over there on the indigenous citizens of the country. Oh, I'm going to impose something on you.
Yeah.
Then I'm
What?
going to take these people from this country and I'm going to impose it on them.
Yeah.
The same thing with the Israelites. If you read, oh God, which book in the Bible? I don't know. It's at the top of my head, but where I think it's one of the, it's either Samuel or Chronicles. Samuel, Kings, or Chronicles,
Okay.
where it's like the Hebrews enslaved these different tribes of people to build their community and culture. But it's like around the topic of shame, I was suicidal from 16 to 19. 19 years old, I finally came out to myself. Even had a conversation with God. I said, if this is how this is going to go, then this is how this is going to go, because it doesn't make sense for me to go and marry a woman and try to have kids with her.
Yeah.
And put the family through all that secrecy and confusion.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I mean, talk about being my authentic self and access to that. And I started seeing a different therapist, which actually affirmed people being themselves. And she turned me on to this place called Horizons, which was a place in Chicago where youths from 14 to 21 would meet on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Then it started growing to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And it was a place where I grew as a person, where I got to be myself, and where I really, really just tapped into my feminine energy, and where I never got to be shamed around it.
Yeah.
And how it occurs for me, even in the world of racism, that feminine energy of a man is now beginning to be celebrated among the African American community than anywhere else, whereas with whites, it's pretty much accepted, because for me, if a Black man was effeminate and not masculine, it wasn't as threatening.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll keep them around. Oh yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And so I guess that is one way of where throughout some of my life, I became an exception to being around some whites, because some whites didn't find me threatening, even though I'm 6'3". Well, no, I'm not 6'3", I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2". It says it on my license.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like this realm. It's even a realm of shame for me I'm projecting, that could be underlying in some whites, especially in the poor white communities, where they're constantly being told by rich white communities, you got to preserve your land, because if you don't, Blacks are going to take over, or Blacks are going to do. Now it's not Mexicans that are going to take over.
Yeah.
It's just all this
Power struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all this based on superstition.
I want to go back to a comment that you made about you talked about white people experiencing you, and I actually want to flip it around. What is it like for you to experience a white person? And I want to be I want to be real. Like let's dig in, and you can
Yeah.
ask me the same question. I don't mind being on the hot seat as well. I think this conversation has potential to go into a really cool area where we can really explore some stuff. I'd love to know what it's like for you to experience a white person.
Do you want me to? I'll be very honest.
That's
I
all I
may be
ask. Yeah.
good, short. All right, these kids. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Um, I actually, I actually feel safe. I feel safer around whites than I do some blacks.
Hmm. I think that's the
It
last answer I would have expected.
based on my experience
Okay.
growing up, from an integrated community turning into a predominantly African American community
Hmm.
and being bullied by more African Americans than whites for being gay. I mean, I'm not going to be totally blind
Yeah.
to racism and how it works. I mean, thank God I had parents. I had parents that were like came up like at the end of the Depression and had like had had even bigger obstacles presented towards them, in terms in terms of racism. They've told me stories of their experiences.
Hmm.
They've told me their stories of experiences with jobs, experiences with moving into neighborhoods, finding a home. It just they've been through loopholes.
Yeah.
Whereas I would go ahead and I would listen, and for some reason, the black people that I grew up around, especially later in high school, gave me a very hard time. They gave me a very hard time about being gay.
Hmm.
Gave me a very hard time. Not denying that, there are whites that don't do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it could be whites that do it to other whites.
Yeah. Definitely. I experienced some of that growing up gay as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do I feel about being around a white person? I'm fine. I'm fine with it. However, if it gets to be like if it becomes a homogeneous populace at a bigger volume,
Hmm.
I'm going to be suspect. I'm like, oh my God, I have to do, okay, let me get my prescription sunglasses real quick so I can see them. I know that's a racist joke. I'm sorry.
It's funny. You know what's interesting? I just spent 9 months, or sorry, 8 months living in Asia. So I was in Thailand and Vietnam, and I was in
Mm,
smaller cities, so it was very homogenous there. There was, predominantly all Vietnamese people.
right.
It was the first time in my life that I've spent a long duration of time being a minority, and it was very eye-opening for me. And it was kind of like the opening to me wanting to explore this side of some of my conditioning and what it's like to be a white person in a minority setting and that sort of stuff. And it was really interesting. um I think the biggest thing that came out of it for me is just how under the microscope you always feel. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
There's no being a wallflower. Like you're always kind of being stared at, or you're
No.
always being questioned, or you're always being whatever. And the Vietnamese people were very, very kind. I'm not saying that I experienced a ton of racism. I did experience some, but um yeah. So yeah, it was interesting for me to have that experience. Really good for me to actually to have that experience.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
I want to take this conversation into a place where it can be a little bit more educational for the listeners, because um, I want to talk a bit about how, well, first of all, how as white people we can be an ally and be a support and be have these conversations without feeling like we're saying the wrong thing, or that we're walking on eggshells, because I know that's a very common experience for a lot of white people. Is they have a lot of anxiety, they have a
Mm,
lot of shame, and they try to maybe lighten the situation with humor, and then again it makes you feel like you're under the microscope even more, right? So
yep.
what and obviously this is going to be very individual to you, but I'm not going to get you to speak for the whole black race or anything, but for you, what's been helpful for you to have conversations around race with people, specifically white people?
I have had the blessing of being raised by two wonderful parents
Mm-hmm.
who raised me to listen openly to other people, and to also, not everybody's going to agree with you
Yeah.
on your point of view around life, because everyone has a different walk and everyone has a different journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also learned in some self-development, particularly, you probably heard of it. Have you heard of Landmark?
I have. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done the forum?
I haven't. No. I know lots of people that have, and I've done coaching with people that have, so I understand it quite well, actually.
Oh, child, let me tell you, everything begins in the listening.
Yeah.
Everything. Everything begins in the listening. It's like I had a previous conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trained to listen to each other. We're trained to hear to react.
Yeah. And defend.
Yeah, we're here to attract. We're here to hear, to react, defend, and prevail,
Yeah.
and be right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's also the listening of racism itself. The listening of racism itself is to prevail.
Yes. Exactly.
It's really to prevail. And so I would say, starting with having conversations like this, like for yourself to initiate, to invite me to be on your podcast and to have these type of conversations, and to also be told that I made a difference for you, and for me to be a space for other people who may be expressing some shame and some intimidation around the subject of racism.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've grown up with all different types of people. I have heard all different types of viewpoints.
Yeah.
I have had the blessing of like not listening to just one viewpoint and having to agree on one viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because if you agree on one viewpoint, it's going to stagnate how you relate with other people, how you relate with different people.
Yeah, it creates blind spots, right? And that's what a lot of people think white privilege is rooted in, is these blind spots where we're not educated to the point of being able to see life through your eyes. So we're not sure how our privilege impacts other people. And I think that's why it's so important for us to inform and educate ourselves, so that we know these blind spots and we make them more aware, and we can therefore conduct ourselves in a way that is, again, more empathy, so we can understand how other people are impacted by even just our presence.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's not even things.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's a very good way of putting it. Like that, a lot of that is rooted in a blind spot that is yet to be realized.
Yeah.
And then with our human nature, we actually fight blind spots to be revealed.
Exactly. Yeah. Ego.
Because we want things are going fine the way they are and the way they're not.
Yeah.
And then something else comes to the root, we got to do everything to resist it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, my privilege works for me. I don't want to hear that it's actually oppressing someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's important to have these conversations. And I think it's also really important to understand that all races and all cultures have blind spots, right? And it's very important for us to acknowledge them, and not just as white people, as all people, to acknowledge our blind spots. And right now, obviously, we're talking about, white people and acknowledging their blind spots. And that's so, so important for white people to be doing this right now. And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
and
cool.
For Black people to acknowledge, for us to acknowledge our blind spots among each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because racism, it's not, for me, racism isn't just white towards Black. It's also Black towards Black.
Yeah.
Ranging from skin color, hair texture,
yeah,
facial features, word pronunciation,
Yeah.
with composure.
Yeah. And a lot of this is actually infiltrated from the dominator system, the white male dominated system.
Yes.
So you guys are oppressing each
Like I
other.
told you, what have I been telling you? The slave becomes a slave master.
Yeah.
Go read a look. I'm telling you, go read Exodus.
Okay.
And then go read it how the Hebrews became the Israelites.
Yeah. It's the
And
trickle down
the Israelites
effect.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's this saying that we're still copying the Egyptians.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I want to point out, so you were kind of like a safe practice round for me. You have a lot of consciousness, you have a lot of just a beautiful presence, okay? And for me to have this conversation with you, it's quite easy and it comes naturally to me. Not all people are going to bring this presentation to a conversation. So when I have some conversations with people, I feel like they're leading with fear and hate and anger and all this stuff, and that's okay. Okay, it's really is okay, but it's when it remains unconscious and they're unpacking it and making it about me. So that's when I want to go on defense as a white person. I want to defend myself because I feel like I'm being attacked, right? So you made a comment to me in our previous conversation. You said, when you defend yourself, regardless of whether you agree or not with the person, you are invalidating their experience of you. And their experience of you is valid, but it doesn't mean I have to take it on and make it about me. And I think that alone, it gave me chills when I heard you say that, because I was like, holy shit, this is so cool. And I knew this all along, but it's like when I apply it into this racial context, it really gives me good insight in how I can approach people and have these difficult conversations, right? Lead with curiosity. Don't make it about you. It's what when you're making it about you, that your ego is now involved and you need to take a deep breath, right?
That's right.
Yep. And is it okay to have that conversation within the conversation, like saying, like, you know what, I'm heated right now and I'm feeling defensive, and bring it out on the table?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And we need more conversations like that, not just around racism, but even in interpersonal conversations, in marriages and families and in working associates and this and that, where we're told, like, instead of us being told, don't feel this, don't feel that, emotions are actually energy, signifying something pleasant or something unpleasant or something comfortable, something uncomfortable, or something's not right, or this feels good. Emotions are energy. And when you're, and then when one of us, and the thing is, especially in this day and age, where we have been told and conditioned in some families, don't feel anything, because it throws me off, because I was raised in a family where it's like, you feel anything.
Actually, I was too.
You feel anything. And I'm around other friends, and they don't, it's just like, oh, I'm not emotional. You see emotional on their face. Where you're not, you're like where your self-expression in that moment is not welcome. It's not validated. It's really nullified, because it's our resistance to be with anything.
That's uncomfortable.
And then you have to do some self-work. Why am I uncomfortable? What is my experience with this? Or you may even have to go as far as, what am I making up about this? Like, what am I making up? Like, what actually happened? And then what's my interpretation? And too many times we lead with our interpretations and not with what happened.
That's a really good point. We're filtering it through our own beliefs, and our beliefs tend to, when unconscious, tend to be rooted in fear. And that's where we start to get really, really aggressive, and we become very hate-filled, is when our beliefs are rooted in fear.
And what are the three, and I even, let's see, there's this guy that does these clips. His name is Dr. E.A.
Okay.
He's an African American. You can look him up on Google, but Like he pointed that subject out about beliefs. What are the 3 letters that are in beliefs? What are the 3 letters what's one word that you could see in belief?
B. One letter or word?
One word.
B is one of them.
That's one of them. Okay. But
B.
then there's another word.
B. E.
It's right next to it.
Live? B. I need to write it
No,
down maybe.
belief. It's a 3-letter word.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. B. Bell?
No.
L-B-E-L. Just tell me.
Lie.
Lie. Oh, okay. Yes.
Belief is spelled
L-I-E.
B-E-L-I-E-F. Be life or be lie.
Be lie. Okay. So bring it back home. What are you trying to get at?
That most of our that I've come to the point where it's like where a lot of beliefs are lies.
What's one for you that you would say is a lie? Something that you've believed in that you've had to really uncondition yourself to?
Oh God, I'm still unconditioning myself to this.
Yeah, me too.
My belief is that this world is dishonest and I'm not strong enough. The world is dangerous. The world is exclusive. The world is unrighteous. And everyone wants to take advantage of me because I'm very kind. And if I'm kind, I'll be kind to the wrong people. And even within that lie becomes truth as a matter of my speaking. And it shows up out there and I'm listening to the world through that filter. That all humans are liars.
Yeah. And that's the work we need to do. That really is the work. And I think that's the remedy for racism as well, to bring more equality onto this planet is taking our beliefs from unconscious into conscious. So
yes,
we can understand them.
Right. And then once it becomes conscious, because again, human nature, we don't want to do that. Why? If it's brought into the forefront, guess who's got to be accountable? And we want to be right. We don't want to be accountable.
Exactly. And I always tell people, I said, my life started to change when I started to take accountability and responsibility for my own pain, right?
Yeah.
Instead of blaming everybody else for my shit, I started to take accountability for it and everything changed for me.
I took charge of my own happiness.
Yeah.
I had some really, 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 I had to really restructure some views during this COVID phase. Like, I'm not going to be happy. You know what? I'm not going to be happy. I don't need a big home or an elaborate job to show off to people to be happy. I can create happiness from right where I'm at right now from moment to moment.
Yeah.
And I'm creating happiness right here in this conversation with you because I'm creating happiness through communication.
Yeah.
Through being authentic.
Yeah.
And not having any shame there around me saying to you or trying to figure out what can I say to sound good for this person.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It really is. And it's like you're just the model guest to have on this podcast because you bring forth who you are in every essence of what that means to you. And I can feel it, right? I can feel, I have a bullshit detector so strong in my system. And I can feel people's authenticity. And it feels so good when somebody feels safe enough with me to show up in that, because there's no greater gift that somebody could give me than the gift of their authenticity.
Right, because what I also find now that I'm talking with you, what I can also be responsible for is when I'm not authentic, where I block people out, with some people, I don't have them make a difference for me. So they can't stir up their calling to make a difference for me. Because I'm in my superstition of this person's trying to use me.
Yeah.
This person's trying to manipulate me.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people? Let's even just say people of color that are struggling right now. Like, I feel the energy on this planet around race, and it's so freaking intense. It's unbelievable. I have anxiety in myself because of it. So I can't imagine what it's like for people of color going through this right now. What advice do you have for people that they can start to move in the direction of being more conscious and healing through some of this stuff?
Shoot.
I know it's a big question.
Well, we've been conscious of racism.
Yeah.
I really don't know what to advise except for the stuff we've already been doing. First of all, we've accepted the racism in this country.
Yeah.
We've accepted it. We've accepted it. We will even go ahead and recreate it for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, as African Americans, the way to survive is to keep our creative juices going.
Yeah.
Because that is where we are strongest at. We are strongest at being creative beings, creating things.
Yeah.
Creating things, creating art, creating we're creative people.
Yeah. It's very interesting when you look at people that are in oppressed groups, they tend to be more creative because suffering creates creativity, because in our suffering we find depth and we dig into ourselves, and that's where creative energy comes from. So I think we're at a pivotal point right now where if people can, and that's what I mean by consciousness. I'm not saying people aren't conscious of racism, but how can they turn it and be more conscious of how this is impacting them on an individual level? Because we have like the systemic level, and we also have the individual level. If we're always waiting for the system to change before we can tell ourselves we're okay with ourselves, it ain't going to happen. That day's never going to come.
No, baby. The system can change, but will you?
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. And I had that experience being gay, right? I have come up up against so much resistance from people around being gay, and in Canada, it's just as prevalent as it is in the United States, where hatred and oppression towards gay people. And if I sat and waited for the system or the government to tell me it's okay to be gay, I would still be self-hating right now.
Yeah, because there's that inertia of self-hating that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, on an individual level, we have to be very willing.
Yeah.
Am I willing to do some self-work?
Yeah.
There are some people that are not as intuitive or as introspective as we are.
Yeah.
And there you have to get to a place. Well, you have to get to a place. You have to be provoked to move to something to where, especially if you're in rock bottom.
Yeah.
When you're at your rock bottom. Some people, it may appear that they may be at their rock bottom, but they're not at their rock bottom yet.
Yeah.
So when you get to your rock bottom, that's where you have to start internal work.
Yeah. That's
where you have to start. Okay, what's happening?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is my life not working the way I want it to work?
Yeah.
That's where it has to come.
Yeah.
If I'm waiting on if I'm going to wait on my job or my family or my friends or anybody else to provide me happiness, I'll never be fulfilled.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I wait on everybody else to provide me joy, I'll never be fulfilled. Yeah. If I wait on everybody else to validate me as a human being, I'll never be fulfilled. It will never happen. If I wait on Hollywood to validate me as a human being, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a wise man. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So one other area I want to touch on, because a lot of the people that are going to be watching or listening and watching this, I guess, are people in the gay community, because that's a lot of my following. So what is it like to be a person of color in the gay community? Loaded question, I know, but I want to hear your thoughts and feelings.
No, I'm glad you asked that. Because here's the thing that I've come to realize when I first moved down south especially when I moved to Atlanta. Racism is very prevalent in our community. Racism,
Yeah.
sexism,
Yeah. Ageism.
transphobia.
Yeah. Big time.
That's a big time. Transphobia. Whereas it's, for me, racism and I've dated, and when I started dating, I've dated interracially. And so when, you know, I remember, um, going to some certain places when I was in Chicago, I would be asked to have like more than one form of ID to get into a club.
Wow.
Or down here, down south, I would tell you where the racism has really been since I moved to Atlanta in 2001, in the churches.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King couldn't have said it any better. The most segregated day of the world is Sunday at 11 o'clock in the morning in churches. Because you have black churches, you have white churches. And again, I was brought up in an interracial church.
Yeah.
So black church and a white church, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What's wrong? What's wrong? For me, oh yeah, there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of racism down here, which is why a lot of cisgender gay white men vote for a certain socially conservative party.
Yeah.
To retain
It protects their interests.
Yeah. Retain their cisgendered white male privilege.
Yeah.
And it isn't just going on today. It's been happening before sodomy laws were repealed in the Western world. If you go see the movie The Victim, which is based in 1961, and I'm sorry to go on another tangent, but I mean, it's something for you to see. Go see the movie The Victim.
Okay.
Look up the movie The Victim.
Okay.
It was made in 1961.
I'm going to write this down.
Okay.
Okay, go on.
The Victim, 1961. The Victim was a movie that was centered around men in powerful and affluent positions being blackmailed. And they were being blackmailed for being found out that they were gay. And who are the species that are mostly in power? Cisgendered white men.
Yeah.
So when you have something, if you're not heterosexual, or if you're not Protestant, or if you're not any of that regular stuff, shit hits the fan and it's all over. But like being gay, when it was still looked at as a disorder, as a disease, as a criminal offense,
a sin,
you were actually put on a sex offenders list.
Yeah.
If you were gay, you were put on a sex offenders list. People don't know that.
Yeah.
There was an activist. There's an African American activist by the name of Bayard Rustin. You need to write that down too.
How do you spell it?
B as in boy, A, Y, A, R, D as in David, and then Rustin. The words rust and in. Rustin.
Okay. I'll take
People credit Dr. Martin Luther King for doing the latter work of the civil rights movement, where it was actually the person that like formulated the latter part of the civil rights movement was Bayard Rustin. And the reason why he could not get any credit for any of his, because he was gay. He had something on his record where he was in the back of a vehicle in 1953 in Pasadena, California. He was fooling around with another man. The police caught him. He was arrested. That had to be on his record for the rest of his life.
Mm.
Because they had sodomy laws on the books.
Yeah.
And being that an openly gay Black man back in that day, no. And then to be involved in the civil rights movement, to put in wisdom where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was lacking around the nonviolent movement. It's like Martin Luther King was stepping into the civil rights movement in the 1950s. Bayard Rustin had already perfected that. Like, he's been with everything. Like, Bayard Rustin's a Quaker. He was born in Pennsylvania. He endured a lot of discrimination as a Black minority over there.
Mm.
He's learned to love people unconditionally. He's been in the Communist Party. He's been on multiple racial unity initiatives in the 30s and the 40s.
Yeah.
The original March on Washington for Equality was supposed to happen in 1941, along with Asa Philip Randolph. And it didn't happen because President Roosevelt had already, I think he already made up the Equal Employment Opportunity Committee and had put in a bill of equal workforce for men, which wasn't that effective anyway. But still, it only made things. You can only do 3 things at that time. You could still clean up a white man's toilet. You could go into the army, or you could go work at the post office. That was it. You could only do those 3 things.
Yeah,
that's it. But yeah, and of course, Bayard Rustin got a lot of flack for being gay, not just from the white community, got it from the Black community too. Of course, that beliefs. Yeah, so I would say look him up.
I will. Yeah, I wrote it down. We'll take a peek at that. I have a couple more questions for you, but one of them being, this is specific to the Gay Men's Brotherhood because you're part of the Brotherhood. I see you as being an instrumental part of this moving forward. I really, really love your energy and what you bring. But as a white male in the group that's aware of his privilege, what can I do to make the group inclusive for everybody?
Oh. I guess it goes back to what we discussed. Being open to other people's concerns. Being open to what's said.
Yeah.
I would say be prepared for some objections for what people see.
Yeah.
Because again, if you go to the LGBTQ community and you're still seeing a bunch of predominantly cisgendered white male faces,
yeah,
that's going to raise questions.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think there's going to be people that are going to come and they're going to bring me concerns with love. And then there's going to be people that are going to bring me concerns with fear. And it's going to be a really important, it's going to be really important for me to maintain integrity in some of these conversations with people, because I'm going to be almost, looked at as, people can sometimes approach me with judging the book or judging the cover before reading the book kind of thing. Like, I'm white, I have privilege, but really they don't scratch the surface and see that I'm a white person, that I use my privilege to help educate and help bring people into. So it's like, I find it can be challenging for me. I do want to go on the defense when people start to attack me because I'm white, and they think that because I'm white, I don't understand diversity or how to bring. So it's a fine balance. I want to have these conversations with people and I want to be open, but I feel like there has to be mutual respect on both sides. It's very important.
But I also want to tell you, Matt, there are also people that are going to think because I'm Black, I can't read as well.
Of course, of
I
course.
can't do arithmetic,
Yeah,
or I can't do anything else other than, because I'm Black, I can't do anything else other than shuffle a ball for millions of dollars,
yeah,
spit a few bars on a track,
yeah,
rob and loot in a store, and deal drugs.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly. And you hit that.
and the thing is that, you know, like I said, what comes up for you when those communications come off to you, as people assuming you don't know anything about diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. We're looking at it through the same lens. And that's why I keep saying that empathy is so important, right? Because just because I'm white doesn't mean that I'm not subject to feeling invalidated by being a human being, right? I think, and that's really what I would love to see this world get to, is that we start to look at each other as human beings and not as human
Right.
beings with these characteristics that create separation between you and I,
Yeah.
right? And I know
But
that's
here's
for
the
some people.
thing. But here's the thing. If you're going to create a world like that, it's going to have to start with you listening
Of
to
course.
other people's concerns.
Yeah.
And it's going to take it's going to take you approaching those things from a question or from curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm very more than willing to do, and I have been doing up to this point. So I think it's yeah, it's very important. Listening. It's one of my greatest abilities.
Mm-hmm. But you're really gonna have to. You really it takes like listening to points of views that you're not going to necessarily agree with, and you may even have some people accuse you of things that are not true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already happened. It's happened multiple times. I've had
Yeah.
people. So it's you know, it's, if anything, it's giving me a lot of insight. It's making me question. It's making me get curious about my own conditioning and stuff. But part of this process, when you put yourself under the spotlight, is you develop a thicker skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I won't become calloused, but I will develop a thicker skin to the point where I'm able to differentiate, you know, people bringing me valid concerns and people projecting their pain onto me, because there has to be a distinction between those two. And I can't reinforce unconsciousness, because that's not in my nature. My nature is
Right.
to call out unconsciousness and try and bring consciousness to it, right? So it's the coach in me, it's the counselor in me. I can't help but do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to end with a tip. So I do something in the podcast called "This Is Me" tip of the week, and "This is me" is like a statement of self ownership. Like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm proud of who I am. What's one tip that you can share that's worked for you in your 9 years of doing self development, that's helped you own who you are and be proud of who you are?
Um, write in plenty of journals.
Okay. What are you
Um,
writing?
write in plenty of journals. Write down my feelings. And then after the feelings have gone, after it's calmed down, then like determine what really happened. Then to determine where could I have been responsible, or what could I have done better to alleviate the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, emotions really cloud our objectivity. So I like how you say that. Release the emotion first, and then go into doing some of the, you know, introspection. Look at yourself,
Yeah.
see what part you played in it when you're not heated.
Yeah, when you're not heated, but like I said, emotions going to naturally come up. I'm not saying like block the emotion. That's going to be even more toxic. What you resist persists. So it's
Exactly. Yeah.
going to get stronger. So if you just be with the emotion where it is, but you don't marry it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You don't stay there.
Yeah. I like that one.
Like I said, especially on this topic right here of racism, like it's like I said, you know, like a lot of people in this world, be prepared to have things coming at you.
Yeah.
Be prepared. You're gonna have to be prepared.
Yeah.
And yeah, your humanity is gonna come on out.
Mm-hmm.
You're just gonna have to be responsible.
Yeah.
Like I have things coming out towards me with homophobia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where you stand. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, what I notice is a lot of people want to feel heard and seen and valued. I always like revert back to, if I don't agree with somebody, I'll always just say thank you for sharing your point of view. Um, thanks for commenting. Like just allow them to feel validated. You don't have to say you agree with them. Just say, I see your point of view. I see where you're coming from, right? And it really helps distinguish or extinguish, I should say, people's egos almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then approach the conversations with questions.
Yeah.
As long as you approach the conversations with questions
Yeah.
that are around their concerns
Yeah.
and not yours, that'll validate them even more.
Yeah.
That'll validate other people even more. I mean, it isn't just okay, white and black. It's really relationships in general, like being with that person, like their concerns,
Yeah.
their issues, what are their matters,
Yeah.
what's important to them. Like that's where you begin listening for some things that may be unsaid.
Yeah.
Like you actually may be listening from another African American. I want to get ahead.
Yeah.
I want to have a future. I want to feel safe. I don't feel safe with the police right now.
Yeah.
I've had these instances happening and then seeing these things on TV or seeing these things on social media.
Yeah.
I want to feel safe. Sorry.
Do you have any questions for me?
Not at this moment, no.
Okay. Okay. Well, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. You are a wealth of knowledge. You bring such a beautiful energy, beautiful presence. I'm just so grateful, honestly, that you would even take the time out of your day to have this conversation with me. I'm kind of selfish in a way because I'm using this conversation to help, undo some of my conditioning, but I am a person with influence and I want to take that and I want to help people have these same conversations. So if anything, you're giving people the gift of more consciousness. And I think it's just so beautiful for you to be able to offer that. So thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. And I thank you for the bottom of my heart of allowing me to be in this platform and having this conversation with you. I do appreciate it. Thank you. And I really, my intention for when you publish this conversation is that it makes a difference for the whole world.
I agree. I definitely agree. And let's set that intention. Let's make that, because we need more of this. You look on social media and you see so many things of people fighting and people, guns and this and that. Like there's not enough of these conversations happening in public for people to see and learn from. So no wonder we're all caught in unconscious traps, because that's all we see. That's all that people want to share because they're too scared to have these conversations. So if I can just even alleviate some anxieties and show people how it's possible to have these conversations, I've done my job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, you have a beautiful evening.
You have a beautiful evening too, Matt. Let's stay in touch, okay?
I will.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.